Hi sevens. So this video is going to be exercise 4.5 in your year 8 textbook. So we're learning about adding and subtracting decimals. Specifically looking at when you add and subtract decimals that are negative, and there are specific rules you need to follow in order to do it. Okay. So hopefully you guys know that when you add or subtract any decimals, the decimals must be lined up. So what I mean by that is when you're doing it vertically, so for example, if you're doing like 4.2 plus 6.3, when you're going to write that vertically, you need to make sure that the decimals are lined up. It doesn't matter if this one has more, this one has less. The key thing you need to remember is the decimals need to be lined up. If they are not lined up, your answer will be very wrong. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Okay, so I'm not going to go through adding of decimals because it's quite simple. You just go like this one, 3, 0, 5, bring the decimal down, 6 plus 4 is 11. So that's pretty simple. I feel like you guys already know that. If you don't, please let me know. But this video is specifically going to focus on rules for addition and subtraction of a negative number. So there are 3 rules you need to follow. I'm going to go quite slowly, and if it's getting confusing, just pause the video, try, rewatch it again. Alright, so let's have a look at this. So the first rule is when you add 2 numbers with the same sign, add and keep the sign. So that is the rule. So what that means is, so this is negative 3.65 plus negative, I'm going to change this, I'll just keep it, negative 3.65. So obviously the signs, they're both negative numbers, right? Just give me a sec. So they're both negative. So when you add 2 numbers with the same sign, so negative, you add them together and you keep the sign in the answer. So what you do is, the way you write it will be like this. So sorry, we're just going to stare at the ceiling. So you write it like this, negative 3.65. They're both negative, right? The decimals are lined up. And what they're saying is, obviously the main thing is you're adding them, right? That's the main rule here. So you can add them together. So we're going to add them like normally. We're going to disregard the fact that it has negative here for the time being. So 5 plus 5 is 0. Carry the 1. 6 plus 6, 2. 13. Decimal comes down. 3 plus 3 plus 1 is 7. And then so we've added it. And then you keep the sign. So what that means is the fact that they're both negative, you keep it as negative. So that's my answer. Because if you think about it, in general, let's say this was a full number, negative 3 plus negative 3, like let's say if it was like this. You guys know that when you have these 2 in the middle, they become negative. I taught you guys this, didn't I? And then negative 3 is negative 6. So remember, you're becoming more negative. So always keep them when you're adding 2 negative numbers, you add them like normal and keep the sign as negative. That's the rule. So hopefully that makes sense. Part 2. To add 2 numbers with different signs, so that means you have a negative number and a positive number, find the difference between them, and if you don't know what difference means to subtract, and then use a sign of the number further from 0. So you look at the number that is further from 0 and you keep that sign in your answer. So the first thing you do is you go, let's write it as normal. So we're going to write, oops, sorry guys, give me 1 sec. Okay. Again, align the decimals up. And what they're saying is you find the difference. So you find the difference means you're going to subtract. That's the main thing you're going to do. So you do 7 minus 4 is 3, and 5 minus 2 is 3. So you got 3.3. So I've done that, I've subtracted. Then use the sign of the number further from 0. So when you're looking at negative 5.7 and 2.4, which one is further away from the 0? So you have to kind of imagine like the number line. We know that, let's say 2.4, if I go like this, 2.4 is around here, right? And negative 5.7, let's say it's around here. So obviously that's the one that's furthest away from the 0, and that number has a negative sign. So that means this is also going to have a negative sign. So when you're adding numbers with a different sign, so when you're adding a positive number and a negative number, you subtract it. And then what you do is you find the number that's furthest away from the 0. We know this is furthest away from the 0, and it's a negative number, so we're going to keep it as a negative. So that's rule number 2. This one, this is now when you're subtracting. To subtract a number, add the opposite. Okay, so what you do is, so because they're negatives, right, they're both negative, I'm going to line it up like this. Obviously this one doesn't have anything underneath it, so I'm going to put a 0 there. What they're saying is when you're subtracting a number, add the opposite. So obviously this is negative, the opposite of that is positive. So what we're going to do is we're going to add them. So 7 plus 0 is 7, 0 plus 2, 2, 3 plus 6 is 9, and 5 plus 0 is 5. Bring the decimal down. And the sign is going to remain as negative in this case. So when you have 2 negatives, always going to be a negative. 2 positives, always going to be a positive. So maybe write that as a note on the side here. If you can write down 2 negatives means answer will be negative. Okay, so those are the 3 rules you guys need to keep in mind. I don't expect you guys to memorize this. Like I said, I haven't memorized it or anything like that. It will naturally come with more practice. So if you found it a bit confusing, please watch the video again before you attempt the questions and see how you go. But when you do attempt the questions, please have this opened. There are also examples in your JAC Plus book. So this is JAC Plus from exercise 4.5 in the Year 8 book. What I want you guys to do is, first I want you guys to attempt these questions. So from JAC Plus exercise 4.5 in the Year 8 book, questions 1 J to N and 2 I to L. And then the challenge questions is 8 to 9. If you finish those, attempt these are level 1 and level 2 questions. This will help you a lot. You guys might need a lot more. The level 1 ones are pretty easy. They're just like normal addition, subtraction. But level 2 is where you apply. You might need to apply those rules. Especially with like and D, for example, always make sure that the decimals are lined up. Always remember, with the whole number, 6 can be written as 6.0, right? The decimals are always on the right-hand side, and there's a 0 next to it, if you forget. But yeah, see how you go with these, and we'll discuss this further in our next lesson.